Hi, everybody. Tim Hughes here. I'm the co-founder and CEO of DLA Ignite. Today, I've got April Rudin with me. Now, April, you are, according to Onalytica, the #1 most influential person in the world with regarding to wealth management. And we're going to get in and talk to that. So I'm really impressed with that because that must take an awful lot of work. Before we get into anything, though, tell people where they can get hold of you, where your LinkedIn is and your Twitter is.
So my LinkedIn is April Rudin. That's April, like the month. Rudin, R-U-D, like dog, I-N.
Yeah.
And you can find me on Twitter at the Rudin Group.
That's fantastic. So today we're going to talk about social media, financial services, wealth management. And one of the things that we get an awful lot when we talk to people in financial services is they immediately fold their arms and say, we're a regulated industry. Social media has nothing to do with me. What's your answer to that?
So I started my firm over 10 years ago, and I was faced with those same objections. Number one, we're in a regulated industry. It's too difficult. It's too time consuming. It doesn't relate to me, and there is no benefit. So I think over the past 10 years, people have changed somewhat to understanding that social media is more than a nice to have, but it's a must have.
Right.
And so I think that also as an industry, financial services, particularly wealth management, has moved off of that thought a little bit, Tim. And that thought basically around compliance was generated more about putting out content or putting out information that had to do with investment advice or returns on investment. And I think certainly today, financial advisors, wealth management, and financial services know that people want to really connect with people, and that sometimes topics that have nothing to do with investment advice are really how these connections are made. So I think it's that sort of change in the idea and understanding of social media that has moved people from that.
So financial services and wealth management has always been about relationships.
Yes.
It's always been about a one-to-one relationship. But I think what we're seeing, I've got 1,000 Facebook friends. That's not a boast. I've just accumulated them over the last 10 years. Now, they're not friends. There's people that I've never met. But I think there's a recognition that with social that you will have a far wider network of associates and friends and business colleagues and relationships, and you don't need to have met them. But we all know that if I say this is the best phone in the world, you're not going to take my word for it. You're going to go online and check it out.
100%. So I think let's go past maybe even the word Facebook friends, right? LinkedIn connections. Everyone has a different word for describing who's in their network. So I think the idea of social media and social selling for wealth managers, bankers, and so on becomes building a network and then using that network for not only marketing and creating visibility among that immediate network, right, but also leveraging that network to meet people beyond that.
Right.
So, for example, if we think about what the progression is, you and I became Facebook friends,
yep.
And then we met in person,
yep.
And we're continuing our relationship online and
yep.
offline.
So
yep. we've bridged that. So I like to say people and wealth management, and one of the biggest objections I have from advisors is it's a relationship business, and I work on referrals, and 100% on that. Except now with the internet and with our rating society, people will, I like to say, vet you before they've met you.
Yep.
So let's say that I'm coming to London and I want to know the
like
best.
You did.
Like I did.
Yeah.
And I want to know the best in South Indian, right, restaurant in Shoreditch.
Yep.
Right. Maybe I ask you for that information and you tell it to me. And in the past, I would have simply followed your referral, made a reservation, and gone there. But today, there's that intermediary step, which is, Tim?
Hello.
which is people are going to Google
Vet
that
you.
restaurant.
Yeah.
They're going to vet you
Before you
before
met
they met you. Right. They're going to take a look at the website. They're going to look at the menu. They might even think about what they're going to order. They're going to look at the reviews, and they're going to create that will create some idea in their mind whether they're going to actually take Tim's referral or look away. So I would say the very same thing is of greater importance. Many financial advisors don't know if referrals have been made and if someone has taken the time to vet them before they met them, meaning they went to look at their social profile, both LinkedIn, website, and so on. And they've decided either that's a person that resonates with me and I want to take it a step further, or I'm not interested in that person.
It's,
So I think that's a big
it's
point.
really interesting because I think that the way that we work with social now is that we all, if somebody's mentioned, we go to their social profiles and we jump to a conclusion. And we jump to a conclusion about whether they're funny, whether they're interesting, whether they're serious. I'm connected to somebody on Facebook who constantly leaves jokes. Now, in business, I find that difficult to take seriously. What I'm looking for is somebody that's going to be, you, for example, April. I mean, you share interesting content. So my assumption, I jump to a conclusion that because you're sharing interesting content, you must be an interesting person. Now, I might be wrong. I may be right.
No, you're not wrong.
but that's the conclusion that I jumped to. So we connected. I mean, our relationship is a great case study of how we didn't know each other. We connected it to each other. We probably were connected to each other for probably 2, maybe even 3 years. You then came to London and said, "You fancy a coffee?" Yeah, okay. And in fact, we ended up having lunch, which, if you think about from it was a 2-hour investment of time. And I knew that you would probably, we would have a conversation. You might even try and sell me something. But the fact of the matter is I was willing to give you that time because I knew that we would probably have an interesting conversation, which we did do, because of the content that you were and your persona.
Well, thank you. Yeah.
Yeah. And so there should be a question at the end of that, but it's something that I think that people don't really understand, that actually there's 650 million people on LinkedIn, and we're all jumping to a conclusion about what your LinkedIn profile is like.
So that's a great point. Without asking a question, I'll answer that. So a couple of points here, Tim. So number one, I think, and I try, and I think it's best practices to put out content that reflects both your professional background and also your personal interests. And that's what really makes us into a personal brand. So you might see me putting out a lot of content on wealth management or content marketing or social media. And those are my...
But you also put content, sorry to butt in, but you also put content out about Alzheimer's and dementia and things like that, which interests me because I have a father with Alzheimer's and dementia. And while he'll never get a cure, maybe there'll be a cure for me.
Exactly. Or maybe you'll have that is a connection point.
Yes. And right? That is then, and what you're doing is you're building this is, if we go into a network meeting, if I never met you before and you were in a room and I walked up to you, we would immediately as human beings try and create a connection between ourselves. And we can do that on social, in our pajamas, sitting at our PC or our Mac late at night, and do that to 650 million people.
Exactly. And that's the real opportunity. I mean, where people will put at best practices, and I advise people, and I know you do too, to put out more information about yourself. For example, I'm an American woman, right? And what would we really have in common? The more information we have in our LinkedIn profile, or the kind of content that we share, or my profile on Twitter, my profile on LinkedIn, my profile on Facebook, will give you clues as to what are my interests and where our connection points might be. So, for example, I grew up in Detroit, and maybe I just love Motown music, but maybe that's a connection point for us also, Motown music, because we both love it. And so people want to connect with people. It's difficult to connect with a brand. And so if we make that connection point, that is a great point where we start, and we can begin a relationship that can lead to business, right? So whether or not it's even business between the two of us or business that we refer to each other,
yes,
that is also another really important point, because then we're able to understand who your clients are, who you're selling to, what my business is. But we started on Motown music.
Yeah. So and wealth management is a relationship business, and and not all connections necessarily you will monetize. So as you said, it may be a case of you will sell through your network.
100%. Right. So it's opportunistic when people wanted a financial advisor.
Yeah.
There's no way that you could be posting information or talking about yourself and immediately hit an investor who might want to change an advisor, had a wealth event, something like that would make them a new job change, something that makes them reconsider their wealth manager. But the way to do it is to be continually and constantly in front of people, just as a reminder that you exist.
Yes. So you're constantly, if you're not online, people are not seeing you, therefore you're invisible.
And if you're not active, I'd take that even a step further. Mm-hmm. So a lot of people will tell me, I'm sure you also, I'm on LinkedIn, meaning I have a profile, but they don't know the last time they've posted. So no one can find them either. It makes them truly invisible.
Yeah.
They might have a profile, but people aren't searching for that person. They're more likely to see someone who's in front of them.
And as well as it being about relationship, it's also about trust.
100%. So that's another great point. Particularly, trust is, the most important thing in wealth management and in money, right? So if you have a profile that has a dated profile picture, let's say it's Tim when he had hair down to his shoulders. Sorry about that, Tim. I know that must have been at some point.
When I was 14, yeah.
Yes. So, if your profile picture is dated, then the trust that, puts a question into the trust. If your profile is not up to date, again, if it doesn't talk more about some of your accomplishments and yourself in general, that could put a question into trust. Will this person not put time and energy into managing my portfolio or into our relationship as much time and energy as they put into their online persona? So I think, it's really important to have something that reflects you and reflects your philosophies. I mean, for me, and probably for you also, I do a lot of speaking at events. And sometimes I look at those profile pictures and I can't recognize anyone who's on my panel, because the photo is, either they've gained 50 pounds, lost 50 pounds, lost their hair. And change in the case of women, maybe it's a different hair color, right? So you want to always make sure that your profile is up to date as possible, including the profile picture. Just to go back to a point you made earlier, people will make a judgment whether they like your face or don't like your face. So the more accurately it represents what you actually look like, it becomes another sort of hit the ground running and a point where you've actually connected.
So what you're saying, I mean, there's a word that it tends to be used a lot, which is about authenticity.
Yes.
And it's about having an authenticity of profile in terms of that. I've been doing some work today on social, and one of the things that I found was that an awful lot of the people, especially in financial services, seemed very stuffy. And they were, suit and tie, that actually was, what I'm looking for is somebody that I kind of feel that I want to be friends with them or have a business relationship with them. And some of that was just too stuffy.
So I agree with you. What my best advice to people is, for a lot of corporates, they're used to thinking about a headshot as being something very formal. But in fact, they might be formal people or they might be informal people. So I generally advise my clients to be exactly what they look like every day. So some people are shirt and tie, and if that's the kind of person they are, then that's authentic, as you point out, to their brand, and they should wear that. Other people want a jacket and a shirt, right? Open collar, because that's sort of how they go to work every day.
Yeah.
So I think people need to be more comfortable with who they are and having their brand represent who they are.
Right.
Others might just be as you're dressed, right, in a sweater.
Mm.
And for some clients, right, that's the kind of person they relate to. Others might not trust someone who's not in a shirt and tie, but whoever you are, you need to be authentic to yourself.
So there's a term that you use, which is Center of Influence Network, COI. Explain that to me.
So financial advisors and other bankers and people in financial services sometimes only think about marketing in terms of from themselves to end clients, so B2C and investors, right? They think about marketing or brand building in terms of B2C. Now, they might in their minds understand that people are sending them referrals. That's the center of influence. Those are other professionals in a B2B network. What they generally don't do, that I try to encourage people to do, is really, truly build that center of influence network in a B2B way. And there's no better way to do that than on LinkedIn.
Right.
So people will think, well, I'm fishing for end investors who might be end clients, and those aren't people that I'm going to connect with on LinkedIn, which may or may not be true, depending on the authenticity and transparency of your profile. But there's certainly the opportunity for, say, wealth managers to create relationships and get to know other accountants, for example, who are sitting with their clients and at the time of a wealth event. And there's nothing more opportunistic than knowing this person just sold stock or sold their business. And these are indicators of when someone might be shopping for a new financial advisor, and they might ask their accountant, they might ask their attorney, they might ask other professionals with whom they work for recommendations.
Yeah.
So my best advice is building a really robust center of influence network, marketing to them directly, creating events, creating content that relates more to B2B than B2C, because that's more of a moving target and difficult to catch someone. But having a really robust B2B network and connecting with other professionals who are working with your target client is a way of creating a more robust and rewarding referral network.
Right. And that's, again, back to, it's not necessarily about the network as well, but it's also about selling through the network. It's about how the people that you're connecting to may allow you to get to other people.
Yes, and they are the gatekeepers, and it's also about the timing. I can't stress that enough. For example, I could give you a list of wealthy people, Tim, if you're a financial advisor, but that doesn't mean that those people are looking for a financial advisor.
Yeah.
So you are going to have a complete waste of time by going through that list, contacting people, and then maybe you're thinking that you're going to be giving them your information. They're going to keep it on file. But as we know, on file is, could be a long period of time.
Yeah.
And that's why dealing and working through a network is ideal for bankers, wealth managers, other people in financial services, because it's a money in motion event that someone might be working. And that is the exact time where you want to meet them.
So when you say selling to or marketing to, what you're talking about is providing content rather than going to people and saying, buy Tim Hughes, there's 30% off this week, it's Black Friday, or whatever the thing is.
Did I miss that sale? You were 30% off last week?
It's about providing content. Am I right?
100% right. So content marketing is huge now, and it's of the greatest value, I think, in professional services. No one wants to be sold, but people want to buy services. And the best way to instead of selling and allowing people to buy is to put out good quality content that allows people to understand your point of view. And there's a certain recipe. People ask me about the recipe, and I
What's the
always
recipe?
talk about it
What's
like
the recipe, April?
the recipe is like vegetable soup.
Right.
So there's not there the recipe goes like we need to have water, a variety of vegetables, seasoning, but every time you make it, it could be slightly different and it could still taste very good and still work. So my secret sauce for
Vegetable soup.
is to try, right, and create a vegetable soup. The first iteration, you might put the standard vegetables in and see how it tastes. Same thing in content marketing. So people in financial services should put out some general content and see what resonates. So if they get a lot of clicks, if they have a lot of engagement in terms of comments, then they know that that's working. So, carrots could be better than celery, something like that. But all of the vegetables go into making a really good vegetable soup. So I advise people to just sort of play around with the recipe and see what resonates with their audience. B2B clients are going to like and engage with different sort of content than B2C clients. So you might have different content, different strategy for B2B versus B2C. So it might be more along the lines of education for end investors or clients. It could be for B2B more around industry trends and other items of value in terms of content.
And I actually recommend, if anybody's watching this and they don't know what content to do, is to look at you, April, as a high watermark of the vegetable soup that you put out, because it's you tell me things I don't know. It's insightful. It's varied. It's that I'm never going to like or be interested in every single article, but there's always enough. There's always enough that I go, oh, that's interesting. That's interesting. Oh, that's interesting. Not interesting. Oh, that's interesting. And I think that's what people should aspire to, in the way that and not all of it is on topic. So not all of it is about wealth management, as I've said earlier on. You share stuff about life sciences, and for which and science, and some people have an interest in that, and some people don't. But you will pick and choose. But
Thank you.
Thank you. You're welcome. But you've also talked about how you can use content to position yourself in terms of your inbound leads and how you can match that to your skills. So in a way, you're qualifying your opportunities by your profile and your content. Explain that to me.
So that's a great point. So by virtue of the content that you put out, you have a wide variety of content. And sometimes I describe it to people as putting out fish, right? You're fishing with certain bait, right? Yep. And you might try out different, because again, I grew up in Michigan. I'm interested in life science. I have a son who's a biomedical engineer. So that's how I developed that interest also. And I love the technology end of it also. But you might put out some bait and see what it hooks, right? And so putting out different kinds of bait allows you to see who and what is connected to the content that you put out. You can put out, again, going back to the vegetable soup too, more of this, less of that. If I'm a financial advisor and I have a particular specialty in, let's say, transitioning women coming out of a divorce or a death or something like that, I might put out content that's all about that, so that people understand that's my expertise or my area of interest. And I think the more niche-y people can be, putting out specific thinking about, right, what are their keywords, what are the things that they want to repeat, will return back in connections, interest, engagement with people who are more directly connected to them. So to answer your question, I think that people need to be thoughtful. You can put out a wide variety of content, but not so wide that people don't know what your interests are or anything about your personality. So you want to be varied, but not very varied. So perhaps you think about 10 to 15 keywords that you want your content to be about that connect both on your personal side and your professional side, and that becomes a win-win.
Right. And And so you also talk about the fact that customers now want an advisor that's digital savvy.
Yes. So people think about wealth management, particularly in the UK, as sort of a dusty, musty, old-fashioned
Right.
medieval times business where maybe their financial advisor is sitting with an abacus in a room, right, calculating their portfolio. But of course, we know that's not true. Today, everyone has a smartphone.
Yeah.
And they're using that, and they want to work with a financial advisor or a banker that has tech tools that they know they can rely on. So whether it's reg tech, regulatory, something that underlies the technology, wealth tech, something that makes their advisor or banker smarter in terms of managing their money, making recommendations, or simply a portal, a platform where they can log in and have access to their information without talking to a person. All of these things really enter into the relationship. So I think, that doesn't take away it doesn't take away from the personal interaction. I think that professionals need to understand it simply frees them up for more time to be spent on the personal side, things that technology doesn't do well when they use technology to do the more mundane and repetitive tasks.
Thank you. Also, you have a great story about someone that you were talking to who said they didn't want to be online.
Yes.
And so tell us that story, because I've dined out on it a number of times. So you tell it to everybody.
Sure. Thanks, Tim. So I was working with a very senior executive at a major global wealth management firm here in New York City. And we were redoing all of the LinkedIn profiles, and this is some years ago. And this woman said to me she was very uncomfortable with being on LinkedIn. She didn't want to be active on LinkedIn and wasn't sure what to put in her profile and really reticent about doing that. So I had my trusty laptop there, and I simply Googled this woman's name. And to my surprise, a person who didn't want to be online via LinkedIn had herself almost totally exposed with her personal life. So I started to ask her a series of questions like the game, What's Who? And I asked her, does your husband have a mustache? And she replied, yes. I asked her, do you have a brown and white dog? And she replied, yes. I said, do you have a daughter who's around 9 years old? And at that point, she stopped me and asked me, what are you looking at? How do you know all of that? I turned my computer around to show her that she had just taken family photos, and her local family photographer had posted those online and had tagged her name in it. And so it showed up in my Google search. So here she was, really nervous about creating a LinkedIn profile where she's able to control the content, control the images, put her best foot forward and talk about what she wants to say, instead of me looking at 50 pictures of the inside of her home, her children, her husband, like all of that information. So
I think there's a really important learning there, isn't there? Which is that we quite often think that if we're not on social, we're in control. But actually, the genie's out the bottle, and there's so many things that we do or have done, which means that if you Google ourselves, there is stuff on there. I actually worked with a guy in Singapore who paid someone to get stuff removed, his details removed off the internet, and he never could stop it. He never, ever. There was always this one photo of him that just kept appearing, and they researched the various servers, and it would just keep appearing, and he was paying someone that. And I think the thing is that while we think that we can control it, we have to embrace it. And I think your experience there of, okay, but let's control what people. If we're going to control this, we control it ourselves. We control our relationships. We control who we block, who we're connected with, what photos appear about us, what the world knows about us. And that is a big step in terms of embracing. And I think that's a really key learning from that.
Thank you. No, I appreciate that point as well, Tim. Obviously, I think that people need to understand that there is public information. For example, here in the US, real estate sales, birth, death, divorce, bankruptcy, all sorts of public information that's posted to the internet. And just because you didn't post it doesn't mean it's not there. So it's a healthy exercise to Google yourself. And in many different ways, with quotation marks, your middle name, particularly if you're someone who has a more unique name like mine, as opposed to your name, which could be a little bit more generic, or there could be many Timothy Hughes. You want to make sure that people associate the proper Timothy Hughes and not the mass murderer or whoever,
the
bank
Christian
robber.
rock star,
Yeah, exactly like that. So, and then the other point is that LinkedIn, Twitter, and Facebook are number 1, 2, and 3 in SEO. So it's really important to have those profiles and have those profiles up to date, because those are going to be the first things that people generally will see, although you may be able to move your website up as well. So controlling it from the standpoint of putting your best foot forward, the photos that you want people to see, and the messages that you think really best describe you, yourself, and your business.
It's an interesting point that you make there about the SEO, because I think a lot of people work on, it's my website, therefore I want that on page 1 of Google. When actually LinkedIn has, I don't know how many million page, 650 people. So there's 650 million pages. It's content rich. What does Google like? Google likes websites with lots of pages, which is content rich. So always, if you Google yourself, you'll generally find your LinkedIn profile will be higher than your website, unless you're spending thousands of dollars to bring it up. So, this is about, take the easy option and actually work on your LinkedIn profile, because you'll get better SEO value from that.
Yes, and your LinkedIn profile can be also a hub. Many people just think that their website is a hub. And in my business, I work with a lot of people who work with global enterprise firms. And there might be nothing on the website that really relates to them, or it could be pages deep where you find the actual business unit that they're working for. So LinkedIn, it's again, people selling to people rather than the institution. So LinkedIn becomes a great hub where you can have conversation, you can post content, and you can really meet people and become super effective very quickly.
And let's not forget, vet you before you met you.
People vet you before they met you. I mean, that is just, to me, it's just something to keep in mind. Meaning that when you look at the person or you read their profile, we're only people and we make a judgment on that. So you can sway that judgment based on the information, the photos, and so on that you put up. So always keep that in mind. Even though wealth management is a relationship and is a referral business, people are going to take that intermediary step and Google you. Absolutely.
April, it's been really insightful and interesting view into the world of wealth management. And it's amazing, isn't it, how many businesses actually do work based on relationships, even in a regulatory format. Remind everybody where people can get hold of you.
April at therudingroup.com, which is my email address. Still, email works. You can find me on LinkedIn at April Rudin, and certainly on Twitter at the Rudin Group.
Fantastic. Thank you for your insight today, April. It's been amazing. And I'll see you soon.
I hope so. Thank you for having me, Tim.
You're welcome. Thanks, April.